The first Sunday after my wedding, I was 19 years old, and I sat at my mother-in-law's kitchen table with my hands folded in my lap, waiting for her to tell me what to do. She did not look at me. She set a wooden spoon down on the counter without a sound. Then she walked past my chair, pressed 2 fingers hard against my shoulder, and whispered 3 words in Pennsylvania Dutch that I had never heard spoken to a grown woman before. I felt my face burn. I did not understand yet what those words meant, but I understood her fingers. I understood the pressure of them, and I understood even then that something had just begun that I would not be allowed to refuse. That was the first Sunday. There would be 623 more. Before I tell you what she did, and what I did, and what 12 years of Sundays will do to a woman who is not allowed to say no, let me introduce myself. My name is Anna. I am 83 years old. I grew up Old Order Amish in Lancaster County, and I lived as an Amish wife for 41 years before I left at the age of 60. This is Hannah, the Amish girl, the channel where women like me share the stories we were never permitted to speak out loud. If you want to hear the truth from someone who lived a long life inside that world, please subscribe and tap the like button. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and have you ever heard the word Schwiegermutter before today? It means mother-in-law. In my world, that word carried a weight you cannot imagine. Let me explain something that took me 40 years to understand. In Amish life, when a young woman marries, she does not simply gain a husband. She gains a position inside a household that is older than she is, and that household has rules she did not write and cannot rewrite. In my community, the youngest son traditionally inherited the family farm, and his wife came to live in what we called the Großdaadi house, the grandfather house, attached to the main home. My husband Eli was the youngest, so from the day we married, his mother Lydia lived 20 steps from my kitchen door. 20 steps. I counted them every Sunday for 12 years. Sundays in our community were the heart of everything. Church service in the morning, 3 full hours on hard wooden benches. Then the fellowship meal. Then in the afternoon, the families went home, and the daughters-in-law went to their mothers-in-law. That was the tradition. Nobody wrote it down. Nobody had to. It was simply what was done. The young wife came to the older woman's kitchen, and she submitted herself for what the older women called Unterweisung, instruction. Instruction is a soft word. What happened in that kitchen was not soft. The first Sunday after she pressed her fingers into my shoulder, Lydia put a basket of potatoes on the table and told me to peel them. I had been peeling potatoes since I was 6 years old. I picked up the knife and began. She watched me for less than a minute. Then she took the knife from my hand, set it down, and slapped the back of my wrist hard enough to leave a red mark. "Too thick," she said. "You waste. A wasteful wife is a shame on her husband. Begin again." I began again. She slapped my wrist 3 more times that afternoon. By the time Eli came to walk me home in the evening, my right hand was swollen. He saw it. He did not say anything. I did not say anything. We walked the 20 steps home in silence, and that night I lay in our bed and stared at the ceiling and told myself that this was what marriage was. This was what becoming a good Amish wife required. My own mother had endured the same, her mother before her. The line of women stretched back generations, and every one of them had sat at a kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon and learned to bear what the older woman delivered. Here is what nobody outside our world understands. The slaps were not the worst part. They were almost a relief, because they were quick. What came after was harder. Lydia would sit me down at the table, pour 2 cups of coffee, and begin to talk. She would talk for 3 hours, sometimes 4. She would tell me everything I had done wrong that week. The way I hung Eli's shirts on the line. The way I greeted the bishop's wife at service. The way I carried myself when I walked to the mailbox. She had been watching me. From her window in the Gross Dotty house, she had been watching me all week. Every Sunday she presented me with the list. She remembered everything. She forgot nothing. If I cried, she would tell me that tears were hochmut, pride, the greatest sin. A woman who cried because she was corrected was a woman who thought too much of herself. So I learned not to cry. By the 2nd year, I could sit through 4 hours of correction with a face as still as stone. Lydia approved of this. She told Eli's father that I was finally becoming teachable. I remember the word she used, lerbar, teachable, as if I were a horse being broken to harness. The 2nd year was when she started touching my hair. This is the part I have told almost no one. Not even my own daughter, until very recently. On the 3rd Sunday of the 2nd year, Lydia decided that my prayer cap was not pinned correctly. She came around behind my chair, removed the pins, took down my hair, and began to comb it, slowly, for nearly an hour. She would pull the comb through, and then she would stop, and then she would pull again. She told me, while she combed, all the ways my mother had failed me, all the ways I was not yet a true Amish wife, all the ways Eli deserved better. Her hands in my hair felt like ownership. That is the only word I have for it. She was telling me with her hands that I belonged to her now, not to my mother, not even to myself. This became a Sunday ritual every week, the combing, the whispering, the slow, quiet claiming of a young woman by an older one who had been claimed the same way 40 years before. Before I go on, I want to tell you about my friend Rebecca. Rebecca married Eli's cousin 2 years before I married Eli. She lived in the next farm over. When I was newly married and confused and bruised, Rebecca was the only woman I dared to speak to. We would meet at the fence between our gardens on Monday mornings, and we would talk in low voices while we pretended to inspect the bean rows. Rebecca's mother-in-law was named Fanny. Fanny did not slap. Fanny did something else. Fanny made Rebecca kneel. Every Sunday afternoon, Rebecca knelt on the wooden floor of Fanny's kitchen for the entire visit, sometimes 4 or 5 hours, while Fanny sat in a chair above her and recited her failings. By the 3rd year of her marriage, Rebecca's knees were so damaged that she could no longer kneel for prayer in church without weeping. The bishop noticed. He asked her husband what was wrong. Her husband said, "She has weak knees." That was the end of the conversation. Rebecca told me once, leaning over the bean rows, that she had begun to dream of running, not running away, just running, down a long road with nothing in her hands and no one waiting at the other end. She said the dream made her feel guilty for a week afterward. I told her I had the same dream. We never spoke of it again. The 5th year of my marriage, I gave birth to my first son. I named him Samuel. I thought foolishly that becoming a mother would change something between Lydia and me, that she would see me differently now, that we were both mothers now, both women who had brought a child into this world, and surely that meant something. It meant nothing. It meant the Sundays got worse. Now she had a new subject. Now every Sunday she could tell me everything I was doing wrong with Samuel. The way I held him, the way I nursed him, the way I dressed him. By the time Samuel was 3 months old, she had told me 147 times that I was raising him wrong. I know the number because I started counting. I would sit at her table, and in my mind I would count. 1, 2, 3, each correction a number. Each Sunday a column added to the long ledger I kept in my head. Counting was the only way I could stay in my body and not float away. Here is something I want you to understand, because it took me decades to understand it myself. Lydia was not a monster. She was a woman who had been shaped by exactly the same hand she now used on me. 40 years before, she had sat at her own mother-in-law's kitchen table on Sunday afternoons. She had her own ledger. She had her own ritual. The system did not begin with her, and it would not end with her unless someone broke it, and no one ever broke it. It was passed down, mother-in-law to daughter-in-law, like a recipe written in a language nobody questioned. In our community, this was not seen as cruelty. It was seen as formation. The older woman was forming the younger woman into a proper Amish wife. The slaps, the corrections, the long Sundays of talking, the hands in the hair, the kneeling, all of it was understood as love. Hard love. The kind of love that prepared a woman for the hard life ahead of her. To refuse this formation was to refuse the community itself. To question it was hochmut. Pride, always pride. Pride was the trapdoor under every Amish woman's feet, and the older women held the latch. The 7th year, something inside me began to break. Not loudly, quietly, the way a piece of pottery cracks when it has been heated and cooled too many times. I started forgetting things, small things, where I had put the broom, what day of the week it was, the names of my own cousins. I would stand in the middle of my kitchen with a wet rag in my hand and not remember what I had been about to clean. Eli noticed. He asked me if I was sick. I told him I was tired. That was the only word I had. Tired. The 9th year, I began to drink ginger tea before every Sunday visit, not because it helped my stomach, although it did, because the cup was something to hold, because the warmth in my hands was something I could feel that was not Lydia's fingers. I would wrap both hands around that cup and sip slowly and tell myself, you are still in here. You are still Anna. She has not taken everything yet. The 11th year, Lydia got sick, a fever that lasted 9 days. For 9 days she could not leave her bed in the gross Dottie house, and I was the one who brought her broth and changed her sheets and washed her body. I did it because that was what a daughter-in-law did. I did it without speaking. I did it with the same still face I had learned in her kitchen. On the 7th day, while I was wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, she opened her eyes and looked at me, and for the first time in 11 years, I saw something I did not recognize in her face. Fear. She was 81 years old, and she was afraid she was dying, and the only person there to hold her hand was the young woman she had spent 11 years breaking. She did not apologize. She never apologized, but she squeezed my hand just once, and she whispered, "Du bist gut," which means you are good. And then she closed her eyes again. She recovered. The next Sunday, she slapped my wrist for cutting the bread the wrong way. The moment in the bedroom was never spoken of again. The 12th year, Lydia died, a stroke in her sleep. Eli found her in the morning. The funeral was 3 days later. I wore the black dress I had been keeping in the cedar chest for exactly this day. I had been keeping it for years. I sewed it myself in secret when I was 24. I had known then somehow that I would need it eventually, and that I would want to wear something I had made with my own hands, something she had not corrected, something that was mine. At the funeral, my own mother held my arm. She looked at me with eyes that had seen everything and said nothing. Then she leaned close and whispered in Pennsylvania Dutch, "Es ist vorbei. It is over." And I understood then that she had known. All 12 years she had known. Every mother in our community had known. They had all sat at their own kitchen tables once. They had all kept their own ledgers. The silence among the women was not ignorance. It was complicity. And it was, I think now, the only kind of mercy they knew how to give, to not speak of it, to let each woman bear her years alone, the way they had borne theirs. I lived as an Amish wife for 29 more years after Lydia died. I raised 5 children. I buried Eli when I was 58. And at 60, after my youngest daughter was married and gone, I left the community. I left because I had spent 41 years being formed by other people's hands, and I wanted, before I died, to know what my own hands could do when no one was watching. The shunning was immediate. My letters returned unopened. My grandchildren told to walk past me in town without speaking. My name removed from the family Bible in the way they remove names. I knew it would happen. I had counted that cost in my ledger for many years. I want to tell you what an English therapist said to me when I was 72 years old. We had been working together for almost a decade by then, slowly, the way old women work on quilts. She asked me one afternoon what I would say to the 19-year-old girl who sat at Lydia's kitchen table that first Sunday. I thought about it for a long time. I told her I would say, "The slaps are not love. The combing is not love. The 4 hours of correction are not love. The hands on your shoulder are not formation. They are inheritance, and inheritance is not the same as love. You are allowed to put it down. You are allowed to be the woman who does not pass it on." I had 4 daughters-in-law in my Amish life before I left. I want you to know something. I never slapped one of them. I never made one kneel. I never combed one of their hair while telling her she was failing. The Sundays they came to my kitchen, I poured coffee, and I asked them about their gardens and their husbands and their dreams. I asked them what they wanted. None of them had ever been asked before. I watched them try to answer the question, and I watched them not know how. And I thought, this is the only thing I can do. I cannot give back to those women the years that were taken from me, but I can refuse to take years from them. The chain broke in my kitchen, quietly, with coffee, without anyone noticing. If you grew up in a world where formation was confused with cruelty, I see you. If you sat at a kitchen table somewhere and counted the corrections in your head while your face stayed still, I see you. If your inheritance was a heavy thing pressed into your hands by a woman who had once been pressed the same way, you are not alone. And you are allowed, even now, even at 83, even at any age, to set it down. If this story stayed with you, leave me a comment. Tell me what part you carried away. Tell me about the older woman in your life, if you had one. And if you want to hear more from behind the prayer cap, from a woman who lived a long life inside that world and finally stepped out of it, subscribe to Hannah the Amish Girl. There is so much I have not yet said. Until next time, The chain ends with whoever decides it ends. Let it be you.